Hi, I'm Professor Amy Keeley, and I wanted to take you through a series of videos starting with professional APA format writing. It is going to be required at LCC in particular classes, and also definitely required in four-year colleges in the business track, which would also include marketing. So it's really important that you create a good foundation beginning at LCC so that you can have greater success, not just in your four-year colleges, but also in your career. And I will show you, we'll go through a little bit about what the series is that you can watch, and then getting into professional APA format writing. So we're going to go through right now in this series what is a professionally written paper and what is not. And then there is how to use APA formatting, what is artificial intelligence, which will be in another series, and then what the submission format is will also be in another series. So we'll go through professionally written paper and APA formatting today. So this video complements what's been provided, particularly in my courses, but you should also check the syllabus and in your first week, your first week or first day module in D12, where your instructors will provide you with more details about what kind of writing they expect in their class. LCC School of Business requires APA formatting and also that you be able to write professionally. So it's really important to note that, as students just starting out your academic career, we don't expect perfection on the first several papers, but we do expect you to learn from the mistakes. So it becomes really important that you read the feedback that your instructors give you on every assignment so that you can make those corrections, because most professors will grade you harder on papers towards the end of the semester where you've been given the feedback on how to make the corrections, and if you don't, you'll definitely get, most likely you'll get graded harder, because we've taken the time to give you feedback on how to improve your future papers, so we're expecting you to learn from that and apply it right away. So the concepts in this video, if followed, will ensure that you get higher grades in your courses, but make sure that you reread your course syllabus, and in there in particular the individual instructors' policies, because at LCC they do allow instructors to vary how they teach their own classes. So in particular mine, I tend to be very strict in professional writing because I have found it to be beneficial in my career and advancing my career as well. So professionally written papers will be required in your four-year transfer schools, all of them, because they're expecting you to be at a certain level, whether you've taken your 2 years at the four-year program or if you take your 2 years at a community college. So moving to a four-year college, they're expecting you to be at a certain writing level. So if you don't have that writing level that you learn here at LCC, you're going to be further behind, and we don't want that to happen. So that's why I'm doing this video series. So it's also, if you work for a company, you're going to be writing professionally a lot more than you think. So I don't care if you're in the accounting program, you will be doing an analysis where you have to present and write to clients, whether it's an email that has to be professionally written to a client or your manager, or you're doing some sort of analysis. Write white papers, case studies, they all require professionally written paper. And it's a different language than what is more common speak, and we'll talk about that. But professionally written ideas or papers require you to elevate your ideas. So it means that you have to think about your idea, you have to think about how you communicate your ideas, and be able to use different word choices, because it is a different language. You are reading and learning new terms, for example, in the courses that you're taking, so you definitely should be using those new terms. And I'll walk you through kind of a step-by-step on how to be able to do that. So for example, the first is words that you shouldn't use. And again, there's a lot more than these, but I just want to give you an example. But these are examples of common words that you use in everyday language that do not apply in the professional world. So words like, and phrases like these things, a lot, kind of, sort of, not really, or these are bad. And what I've done is I've taken those words and I've elevated them. So, for example, instead of these things, you would say maybe these products. Instead of saying a lot, you might say a large amount. Instead of saying kind of, you would say slightly higher. Instead of saying not really, you might say most likely. And instead of saying these are bad, you might say negatively impacted, or a poor solution. So all of those different types of phrases mean the same thing as the common language, but you can start to see that writing and professionally requires you to sound a little more professional, not quite academic, but definitely more professional than your everyday language when you're talking to people. So that's important to keep in mind when you're writing papers here at LCC. So how do you use APA formatting? So APA formatting is a required standard that will apply to all four-year transfer schools in their business programs. It is the standard format. It is not MLA, it is APA. APA is the American Psychological Association, created a format for clinicians to be able to write and communicate in a standard way. Almost all business schools have applied the APA. Now, in my day and week one module in D12, I provide you with a document, several documents actually, that will do the comparison between MLA and APA. There's not that much difference, but enough that you should know the differences. So please make sure that you go into my week one or day one series and look that up and copy, print it out so that you have it with you when you're writing. You will use elements of the APA formatting in the business world. So the best writing habits will be learned now as you prepare for your success. So if you start to think about college, especially your two-year program, is really like your formative learning years when you're a child. It's really important that you learn a good foundation because you're going to continue to use it in the future. So now is the time at LCC to practice your professional writing so that when you get out into the real world or you move to a transfer school, you are better prepared. So how is APA formatting used in the professional world? So you want to use the sourcing to avoid plagiarism. Plagiarism is just as equally important in the business world and professional world as it is here in the world of academics. So in a nutshell, if there's a question that's asked in any of your papers and it will say select a company, and let's just say you select Apple, everything that you write about Apple is coming from somebody else's information. It's either coming from Apple itself, it might come from an analyst, it could come from a journalist, but if it is not your knowledge and you didn't generate it, then you must give credit to the people who wrote it. And that is the sourcing process and in-text citations that you use through APA. If you don't, plagiarism is a very serious thing in the world of academia. It's also very serious in the business world. You can lose your job and damage the brand that you're creating for yourself as a professional or your company by plagiarizing. So here at LCC, if you're caught plagiarizing, you can be a complaint can be sent to the Office of Student Compliance, and you could potentially be evicted from the school if it's that serious. So it's really important that you understand what plagiarism is and also how to avoid it by sourcing your material. It also creates subject breaks in the paper to help people know when you are changing ideas. There's nothing more difficult than reading a paper and you have no idea when you're changing ideas or when you're answering a different question. So it really becomes important to use the format to help guide people through your paper to make it easier for them. And you also have titles and header blocks that are used in sales proposals and RFPs and client presentations, and I'll show you some examples of where I did it in my professional career as well to show you how it will translate into the professional world. So I want to take a moment and show you some former student papers and also a place where you can go get more additional information so you can see what I'm looking for. So this would be a student who presented in a paper. Name block is great. On a separate page. The problem is that this should be at the very top as a running head, and I'll show you an example at the very end of what a running head looks like. So that's not technically correct. But they've written the paper fairly nicely. They didn't put subheads underneath here. They did indent. It is double spaced, which is required according to APA. This extra space is not needed, and it's technically not APA. It should be just simply all double spaced. But you can see as reading it, it's hard to read. If it didn't have that space, I wouldn't know when they're changing ideas to answer a different question. That's where the subhead comes in. So here's another example. This name block is great. It's on this page. This is incorrect. It should be at the top again. But here you can see where they've written the question. I don't need the question written out. I already know what the question is. So you should be pulling key words. So for example, your headline or your head could be common leadership styles, and all in uppercase and all as a subhead here. That would let me know as the reader that that's what this is about. So please do not copy the entire question. Use keywords to create a subheading underneath it. But overall, nice, and does have a reference page, even though this reference page, you don't need the word page, and this is inappropriate. You wouldn't, it's only half the reference. You need to do it in APA format. So this one, the reference is at the top, so that's great, but it's not on its own separate page. I would accept this at the beginning of the semester, but not at the end of the semester. The other thing that you can see that's hard to read about this paper is there no indent to tell you where you begin the paragraph, and it's all one big block of text. So you can see how this would be difficult. So using proper grammar, these would have indents as you changed ideas. So for example, you would create an indent in 2015, comma, that would be a separate indent and a separate paragraph. But again, paragraphs are where you're changing ideas to make it easier for someone to read. And this is the final one I wanted to show you. Better, not perfect, but close. So this was what a running head looks like. It's basically the name and title of your paper. Again, your title should be on top. There's the name block. This student went a little overboard, but I'm never going to fault somebody for going overboard by putting in a prompt, which would be like an abstract, along with the questions. So again, those are unnecessary for these type of writing for professional papers. But in here, again, made the mistake of not putting this in a subhead. So otherwise, the paragraphs were indented, double spaced, except for this extra space. So you can see where there are elements that students are doing right, but they're not putting it all together. So I highly recommend that my students go to the Purdue OWL. You can see it up here, owlpurdue.edu. This is, they give you a student paper. So if you wanted to go to their website and find the student paper, or you can just Google APA format student sample paper, and you can see, and they will show you what a sample paper looks like. This is what your cover page should look like. You can see here's a title. You'll see subheads in here. You'll see in-text citations, like this is an in-text citation. Right here, the US, anything in parentheses at the very end is an in-text citation. And if you go down to page 17, you'll see that there is a reference list and how a reference is supposed to look like right here. That's how a reference page is supposed to look like. But again, please go out here and take a look at this so that you can know how best to write your papers, because again, we don't expect perfection at the very beginning of class, but by the end of class, we're expecting you to be able to write a fully formatted APA paper. So to show you real quick about how I used it in the business world, so you can see the same title and header name block is at the top of this intelligence report that I wrote. It has a table of contents to help guide people through it. You can see here are subheaders that are used to make things easier to read for someone. I also have written text before you see that unemployment rate chart. Again, you want to be able to describe what they're going to be seeing visually. So you don't just put a chart in there. You have to explain it, because some people like graphics and they'll read the graphic, and some people don't like it and you prefer a narrative. So you don't know who's going to be reading for it, so you have to do it both ways. Also, you want to use bullet points after the narrative, and I don't want, in my papers in particular, you to write all in bullet points. That's an outline, and that is not a paper, a professionally written paper. So you can use bullet points, but make sure you go out to the APA website or to Purdue OWL and learn how to be able to use an APA formatted bullet point or number list. And then also sourcing. You can see, just like anybody else sources, I don't have a reference page at the end, but I am sourcing information on that page for people. So again, using elements of the APA formatting in a professionally written paper. Here's another white paper I wrote where you can see the same name block. Here you can see I use the numbering system afterwards. All the text is double spaced. And then also there are subheaders that make it easier for people to read as they flow down through the paper. And this is a case study, same thing. You can see where it says situation, solution, results are subheadings, and there's information about it that still follows the same format that you would in APA. So the next series is on artificial intelligence, but thanks and have a great day.